One of the things I want to talk to you today about is pacing. So in a publication, especially a publication of multi-pages, pacing is everything. You cannot have the same thing repeated over and over and over. And we talked a little bit about that in our last project. So the idea that photographs can change size, things like that. So I'm going to take you through a few examples of where and how I try and change pacing. So start with the Vancouver Foundation. It really was a purely sort of illustrative approach to telling the story about how people like Vancouver. So set the stage right at the beginning, right? Very predominantly white, rounded boxes, some pattern, pretty clean sans serif. So once you get past the cover, if I'm going understated here, then maybe on the next spread, I'm gonna go a little bit more color. So if you sort of look from where we started here, you'll see the pattern that was initially introduced here underneath this graphic. But moving into the table of contents, so really a pretty standard table of contents, just set up in colored sections, and then a message from the chair and CEO, which is always one of the driest things in a report. So, you know, trying to keep it clean and relatively picking up the whiteness from the cover, where the inside front cover is a hit of color. Then moving into telling the story about the report itself. So again, some pretty sort of meat and potatoes elements. Really, the vitality story is about what the report is, how to, and then there's research methodology, how to read this report. So it was built to sections of Vancouver. There was public opinion findings, factual data. So the idea here is that we start white, a little bit of pattern, a little bit of illustration, go heavy on the inside front cover because you're not going to have a ton of copy there. Move into continuing that white sort of overall feeling. And again, if you have a look up along the top, introducing some of these elements that I picked up in here, right? So this pattern to create an actual set of folios. And then going through the public survey. So again, very clean and white. The star of this spread, and you'll see we're switching from 2 columns to 3 columns, but primarily on the same grid. And then you can sort of see that for this one, these charts go across 2 pages. And again, you know, what I was trying to do with this is try and make it inviting and interesting and a little bit quirky. So yes, these charts actually have data on them. I made these ones more obvious. Typically, I don't put the numbers right in there, but because these were so many things going on with these things, I made it simpler. And then finally, one more big sort of infographic, and this is the village of 100. If Metro Vancouver were a village of 100 inhabitants, there would be, and for people with a first language other than English. So again, looking at sort of an infographic look, but picking up the pattern that we saw on the inside front cover on the cover, and then some of the illustration. And then finally, a chapter head, right? So this chapter is all about people. So we start with a solid color that introduces the orange color. So if you remember back on the table of contents, here we have broken it into color sections. So here we're basically introducing the orange color, an introduction, and then a main illustration. And then now we're basically templating the rest of the book. So this is going to be how every chapter is going to start. It will start with an introduction, a heading, a illustration, and then moving right into the grades that people gave for different areas of Vancouver. So children and youth, we start with a large pull quote and then move into quite a lot of sectioned out information. And then you'll sort of see these continue on until we hit economy. Then here we go again, right? So now we're picking up that same pattern. Two more pages, and then place. And then same thing. So we're introducing different illustrations, different colors, but really the same formatting. And then finally, society. And then acknowledgements, and if you notice, this is the inside back cover, which again sandwiches the inside front cover. So basically when you open and close the book, you're going to get this same sort of hit of color experience, and then finally the back cover. So another example, completely different from the last report. This is basically an annual report for Genome British Columbia. So the approach here, very kind of news magazine, large typographic approach on the top, large sort of framed in photograph, putting some stories right on the cover, which is different for an annual report. Typically you don't have that much a copy on there, but really wanted to have sort of a news magazine feel to it. So and then fairly subdued color palette, and then as soon as we flip open the inside, we're still going with this sort of white border, but a much more open sort of table of contents, right? So using some interesting scaling, different ways to present these photographs, and then down here at the bottom, a more subdued sort of table of contents for the real sort of meat and potatoes. And then moving to an introduction about the report itself, so keeping it very clean, just with a hit of color. And then as we go, you'll see that hit of color continues on in a very sort of minimal way. So letters from all the bigwigs, really exciting stuff. And then finally moving into the chapters. So with this one, we really went with more of a magazine feel. So we wanted to have each sort of section have kind of its own sort of look and feel to it. So the big C, which is meaning cancer. So sort of some numbers across the photograph, very sort of minimal text, but large graphic. And then as we go, this story continues on. And then moving to a sticky situation. So again, trying to, a little bit more over the top, still trying to keep the fairly minimal look to some things, but a lot of layering of photographs and things like that. And then as we go through, you'll see this quite a bit: environmental canaries in a coal mine, rooting for BC4. So you can sort of see a really over the top sort of news magazine feel to this one, but still trying to keep enough white space that you can present the information. And I'm showing you this one because it's a little bit more along the lines of the Salton Sea, where it really is a photographic report. This was an anniversary for Genome BC, so I came up with the headline, "In 10 years we have changed." And genomics is all about change, and it's also about the way the organization has changed their approach to doing things. So initially they would sort of just fund researchers if the research had chances of doing something, but then later they changed to sort of funding things that would help our environment and help British Columbia. So came up with "In 10 years we have changed," showed a butterfly because it's a kind of a symbol for change and metamorphosis, and then using big photos, right? And in this case, I don't often use like big blocks of color, but in this case, I just wanted to have these sort of chunky blocks that would sort of interrupt the actual photographs. So you'll see some of these pages are broken up with crop marks because this is the print edition. So none of these blue lines and things wouldn't show up. So much different sort of inside front cover, very white. Here's the letter from the board chair, really simple table of contents. And then moving into a big statement: "We have changed from a life science research group and the world-class leader, bringing the social and economic benefits of genome sciences to BC, Canada, and beyond." So really reintroducing that sort of color block in the middle, large type, and then setting that up for literally this report. We came up with sort of 6 or 7 big things they did in the province. So we have changed the future of personalized medicine. So really trying to go with, large photographs. We have changed our approach to fisheries management. So you really see uh, fairly bold color palette, trying to have big images that sort of address what we're talking about. We have changed the options for new sources of energy. We have changed the way we monitor climate change. We have changed the way we view genomics, right? So the whole report, that was really, that was just sort of me sort of pitching them on having, these big things that had changed in their 10 years and having that open the book. So no real heavy text or anything else, just sort of these big ideas, and then sort of an explainer on the photograph itself. And then moving into sort of a big statement about where they're going, how they measure success. So instead of doing a bunch of little charts, doing a huge double-page spread of a chart that sort of represents them. And then moving into this is what 10 years of commitment looks like. So these are a lot of the researchers, and then going very much to a much more subdued, clean, simple approach to the rest of the book. So, and then you've probably never seen anything like this, but these are actual auditors' reports, and we used to have to do charts and stuff for annual reports. So really sectioning out the book, right? So we go from the back, which is the financial report, so it sits on a green, so you know that it's different. The sort of real meat and potatoes of the report, which is just primarily white with small images up along the top. The sort of infographic that it sort of introduces those sections, and then finally the more sort of big statements at the beginning. So all of these things. Okay, I thought I would put this one in so you can sort of see what annual reports used to be like. So this was an annual report for TK Shipping that I did in the year 2000. This would have been probably about a $50,000 print job. So if you can imagine, because you can't tell it on here because it's a PDF, but everything you see up in the line work up here would have been a metallic bronze. Everything that you see here would be printed with a fluorescent green. So very kind of simple, staid approach. Trying to get that across. TK Shipping is the one of the world's largest Aframax shipping companies. So as we go through it, unlike those other books that I showed you, really what they used to try and do with annual reports is make the case to shareholders why they're doing so well. So you can sort of see the inside front cover had sort of their financial highlights, so income throughout the year to 2000, very sort of simple table of contents, and then moving straight into the financial highlights. So this would be the type of report that you don't really fool around with the charts. Really, the design with this one, using this fluorescent green and having these hits, was on the charts to really highlight the current year so that those stood out. But you can sort of see very kind of conservative approach to it, using these kind of rounded lines throughout the design. So, and then moving into the TK profile. So this map actually isn't showing up down here because it's an old PDF. That would have been just a overlay of the bronze color. But then the whole idea behind this report, in a very simple way, is to sort of talk about how TK is around the world. So we got photographs, of different areas where TK was working. So, and then a chairman's message to the shareholders. So going in, hiring a photographer to shoot the chairman, everything is done with kind of bronze sort of duotones, and then carrying that over with sort of hits of gray within this sort of rounded grid that you see, and then again the president and the CEO. So a lot of pretty dry things here, but then moving into sort of these big photographic statements. So you see here tanker supply dynamics. So again, the charts have to be fairly straight ahead so people can understand them, but understated. And then playing that against these huge sort of duotones that you see. So really trying to make the case to the shareholders are really celebrating all the levels and all the different places that TK has been. And then a section, voyage profile. So really looking at a day in the life of TK, and then sort of, what happens in a typical day. So Monday, Singapore, 4 in the afternoon, Vancouver, 2 a.m. So just creating this sort of grid work of images of people working. So all of those would have been shot, hired a photographer for all of those things. And then a huge spread of their actual profile. So if you look, this lists all the ships that they own, and then at any given time, again, continuing this sort of timeline up along the top of any given time around the world. Ships are in these different locations, so you see all the green dots. And this was, it's hard to see on this PDF, but this was actually 2 different blacks. So you can sort of see this different tone on the landmass. So that's a hit of black. The background is a hit of black, and then there's the fluorescent green. So, and then then introducing the financial review with TK is here, and then going into the huge sections of management discussions, the consolidated balance sheets. All of these have to be completely typeset by myself. And they all have to be approved by TK and all their financial guys to make sure all the charts make sense and everything else. So that's kind of more of a background of more traditional publications. But again, as you flip through there, you can sort of see one a kind of common theme, right? So some hits of green and hits of black, and then sort of vague photographs. So again, trying to figure out what the consistency, what the style is, and what you want to do with the publication. So show you a more illustrative example, but still the things to point out are trying to figure out what the consistencies are, what the style of the book is going to be, or the publication is going to be. And then sticking to that style of design, and the elements of design have to be consistent across the board. So this was a book about online, well, the book is about obsession, and then they asked me to do an entire book on obsession for Wayward Arts, which would ask a design firm across Canada to do a version of what they wanted to do. So my version of obsession was finding actual online obsession confessions. So you'll see right from the very beginning, I wanted to have a very kind of bold, a little bit funky, sort of retro feel, like a sideshow or a circus. So we start right at the very beginning with the titling, right? Online Obsession Confessions. amazingly true obsessive commentaries transcribed from the World Wide Web. There's a reason I wrote that subhead, and that's because I wanted it to have this kind of pacing and formal sort of feel that something like a sideshow or a circus would have. So you can sort of see then introducing this illustration, and then moving into the inside front cover. So very sort of different approach to the inside front cover. Very kind of old government sort of form look to it. You know, pulling out some different areas of the contents page, and then introducing the actual theme, right? Amazingly true excerpts from online forums, right? So making it very clear that this wasn't just an old book, it was actually about how the internet has become today's circus sideshows, with people sort of confessing to anything, right? So again, picking up a big hit of color on the inside, but continuing that sort of red feel, and then moving into the stories. Now, each of the stories was a little bit different because it was done by different illustrators. So it was really sort of you know, starting each one with this kind of banner and going into the text, and then pulling out something important from each one of the stories. So you can sort of see some of them were just purely quotes. So each one is, you know, has a lot of the same similarities, same formatting, going from double pages to single pages, that sort of thing, but all of them still have this, you know, hit of green and red as you go through it. And then, you know, when you get to the back, you can sort of see picking up that on the inside front, back cover, and then back cover. Let me show you one more. This was the follow-up to the original Vancouver Foundation. So the person with the bicycle, they hired us basically 4 years later to do another version. So with this one, I wanted to take a completely different approach. So this is a big tabloid sheet. So this is quite almost like an oversized book slash small newspaper. So with this one, it really is about sort of kind of more sort of formal type, but really mixing in things like icons, charts, just like the original one, but reimagining those. So more photo based, so having to shoot this cover, and then yeah, setting this up in a much different way. So you can sort of see very sort of different introduction, purely sort of typographic, and then moving straight into looking at actual images of people without making them look too stockish. You can sort of see that this has very much a design sort of set up with rules. Yeah, you'll see like a lot of rules in here to give it sort of an older news, kind of a newspaper look, but trying to take that and then modernize it. So you can sort of see that trying to find photographs that are a little bit not perfect, but try and talk about the things in the book itself. So a key finding, so if you remember the very original key findings one and the last one that I showed you was that huge color one. This one is purely sort of typographic. And then moving into the sections, so personal connections. So each one of these are set up so that you have an infographic that has the same color palette, same look and feel throughout the thing, throughout the book, and it has these large sort of numbers pulled out. And then again, there's these sort of charts, very simple charts down within the actual. So we're basically looking at 6 columns across the report. So we're basically insetting charts in this one. And then again, sort of going through, inserting photographs. So this was very much a balance between infographics, illustration, photographs, and charts. And then you sort of see what a section head sort of looks like. And then we also had these pages of just stats. So in this section, again, setting it up the same way using these rules, and then carrying those rules through to these numbers over here that sit on a photographic background. So yeah, very much different than the very first one, but trying to keep things consistent. So folios, headings, type have a lot of rules in it. The colors are primarily green and black with some color photography. So you see as you go through the book, there's variations on those infographics, but primarily the overall look and feel of the book stays the same, and then you see the inside back cover. So those are some of the things that you really want to consider when you're working on not just reports or not just publications. It could be websites. It's all about sort of pacing. It's all about having sort of an idea what you want to do, working with a color palette that you understand, working with a style of design that you understand and can sort of get across. So some of the things, some of these design principles will be used in everything you do, from logo design to web design, infographics, all of those things. Everything comes back to sort of understanding what you want to do with your design and how you can sort of accomplish that.